There is a common term that we use in the Pacific time, Fiji time, but I think it's derogatory. Means you come late, you spend several hours just talking, conversing. You spend time not on, for students, not on study, but on games or just fun. But I think the most important one is we don't think about time in terms of the 12 hours or the 24 hours. So some islands, when you say the dinner starts at 6 o'clock, it really means 9 o'clock. So 3 hours later, the dinner officially begins. And so when people say this Pacific time or this Fiji time, it really means the time that you begin the conversation or the time that you begin the actual event. And so when in the minds of many indigenous people it's not about the time, it's about the event. And so this priority of needs, I think for many of the indigenous people, the needs are based on basic needs. And so for anthropologists, they could say, they operate basically on the basic needs. Whereas with the introduction of a 24-hour clock, it moves to productivity. What can we do within that 24 hours? And if we can't do anything that's got to do with people, then people just back off. People just sort of back off. So I think the level of understanding of an event, the level of understanding of an activity is really based on, for many of the islands, it's food. So when are we going to eat? It's not 6 o'clock, it's when the food is cooked. And that's, I think, time sort of based on basic needs. But there's this time based on spatial, but the space, that there's no space. It's basically everything is larger than the day and night, the afternoon. And so the events then becomes the crucial birth, death, marriage, circumcision, whatever it is. All those events determine how we think of the spatial sort of moments. And so the moments, or the time as we call it, is dependent on these major events that happen in our lives. And so we say, okay, time is time for sort of celebrating, and so it can take 6 months. Okay, people come in, take this time. Death, normally, at least in Fiji, 100 nights after the burial, you're supposed to mourn. So for people that have a very measurable perspective of time, 100 nights is a waste of time thinking and sitting around doing nothing about this dead person. But for them, the death and the reflection of death and the respect for the dead is the event. Then the third aspect of time, I think, which this is basically Oceania, is sort of with the sacred. That there's a time for silence, and sometimes the silence may be very, very long. There's a time for a celebration, but all of this has got to get in touch with what I talked about this morning, the sacred. And so this goes one step, so from basic needs to community needs, then to what I'm calling spiritual needs. on the side of the indigenous people, they've got to understand that globalization has determined their outward behavior. That's a fact. And so, for me, the indigenous person has to rethink the events, like reprioritize their basic needs, because now you can buy supermarket food, so the needs will have to change, and when needs change, then the time will change. So they can't stay with that basic need, community need, but stick with the spiritual need. That globalization has affected our basic needs, and basically saying you can get your basic needs in the supermarket. So do that. Work to do that, and they should do that. They should work with that. Community needs, that families and community is not in one space anymore. Some are in the States, some are there. So that's globalization. And so for them to realize that they really cannot get this old mindset that we need to be in a space for this event for 10 days. It's going to be one day, or I'm going to go on Skype and talk to you. So Skype will help me, but I think the human connection, I think the only thing that they can do is, if the human connection can be sustained in a way that uses modern technology. So I think key to the indigenous people is, as I said, care and relationships. If that's key, then time should not be a factor. That I have the cell phone, I have Skype, I have I can do this now and keep the same value. Because the value of the time was basically, for me, is relationship and care. But this can be done, give you the dollar, and I care for you. I don't need to be with you anymore. And you are very happy. So I think that's how globalization and indigenous can be creative and say, how do we do it? And I think the best example is Katarina's talk, how you learn the dance, but you make money from the dance. So we take our values, we celebrate them, but at the same time we make money so that we don't have to spend a longer time with things that are dear to our hearts, like relationship and care. Okay?